final session of our two-day conference, and I believe our session will be another wonderful addition to the discussions we've shared together for the last 2 days. We have two presenters and two discussants. So after each presentation, the presenters and discussants will gather at the table together for a Q&A session. And then I'll open the discussion to the floor, taking comments and feedback and questions. Okay, let me introduce our first presenter. Our first presenter is Professor Irina Lian, the Hebrew University of Jerusalem. The title of her presentation is Imagination, capital N, Imagination, South Korea and its Modern Miracles. So please join me in welcoming her to the stage.
Hello everyone, thank you very much for coming for the last panel of this amazing conference. I would like to thank the organizers and supporting staff. I was amazed by all the ideas in contemporary Korea. And here's one idea that I think we could hear in all the panels throughout this amazing conference. It's about modern miracle. Why Korea? Why Korea's Symptom? Why Korea worth our academic attention? Basically, it's a miracle story. And I took it to the modern miracles out of religion studies. So this is a part of my book project, which focuses on South Korea's modern miracles. And it basically asks 4 questions. How national images, are miraculously imagined and reimagined, how they're constructed, how they resisted, how they reproduced, how they projected. So we know that the nation is imagined. It's in old news thanks to Benedict Anderson, but how exactly it works, right? So for this purpose, to answer this question, I selected 4 miracles. Actually, we can talk endlessly about Korean miracles, esports included, or Korean cosmetics, or sports in general, for example. But I chose 2 miracles that are well known, of course, in this conference, and 2 that are less discussed usually. The first one is the miracle on the Han River, the economic miracle. We enjoy it right now in this beautiful place. The second one is the Korean wave, right? We had 3 panels only on Korean wave, which is quite amazing for contemporary Korea conference. The other 2 are less discussed because they're not defined as miracles, and still I decided to include them. One is a miracle of love. Basically, we see both Koreans and non-Koreans love Korea, right? This love, affection, attraction, right? It's unprecedented in such big amounts, right? And of course, it's thanks to Hallyu, but we also see it, for example, in marriage market and in other different places. So unfortunately, I won't discuss this one because I decided to go to the last miracle which I work for the last 10 years. And this is a miracle of innovation. Basically, Korea is known for its imitation to innovation transition since the late 80s, from one of the nations that was famous for catching up imitation, including illegal imitation, of course. And not only technological one, also if you think about cultural imitation, we see many accusations. It became one of the top leaders in innovation. Every index for innovation includes Korea in its top 10. And this miracle is quite discussed because, you know, it's another development dream of a nation that was enjoying the advantage of backwardness. It's not my words, it's development economist words. And right now, it's actually leading other nations to the innovation period. Of course, there is a big hierarchy between 2. Imitation is bad, innovation is good in very superficial way. And we can see it as a miracle. And actually, Korean politicians title it as a second miracle on the Han River. Park Geun-hye, the daughter of Park Chung-hee, the father of the first miracle, quite used it often with creative economy. But believe me, every politician talked about creative economy, innovation, and the future of technology on Korean Peninsula, even before the Korean nation was established. So, how to approach this miracle? I decided to take a very specific case study, which I'm pretty sure you know or you met at least once in your life. This is the Apple Samsung smartphone patent wars. It was immediately called as a war, as some kind of aggressive technique, aggressive legal dispute, sorry. It continued for 7 years in 10 countries, 4 continents, more than 250 lawsuits and countersuits. By the way, Samsung also sued Apple for infringing its patents. In this specific case, Apple said that at least 8 design and utility patents were used in 20 of Samsung devices. $500 million in damages. Do you remember how did it end? How did it end? I'm pretty sure you don't, right? 2018, it was before Corona, BC, but still, all of us were reading news. Actually, it's quite interesting because it was, it was silence. Basically, they reached some kind of agreement and it ended in, meaningless and very expensive war, let's say, yeah? So why to take this case to explain a Korean miracle of innovation? There are a few reasons. One, Samsung as a chaebol, and of course, Samsung Electronics, the most famous multinational company abroad that it represents Korea and it represents an innovation miracle. Samsung was famous for its imitation practices, again, both legal and illegal, and the difference between is quite important. It's famous for legal battles against American companies. It's famous for its overtaking Sony's position of regional innovator, and suddenly we see it going to the global arena, global stage, let's say, to fight with Apple, right? So we can very easily frame it as techno-nationalism, like nationalism by technology, and global nationalism. Global nationalism, yeah, sorry, I forgot the exact term, meaning saying we are fighting for the future of our nation, or we are fighting of the world, of the future of its citizens. So we quite easily see its dynamics, and I also took it because in 2011, Korea was already distinguished and noted as the nation of innovation. And still, we can see in media, in the social media included, in memes, in all kinds of humorous remarks, that it's far from innovation status, right? So I thought if I look at this imitation to innovation transfer through this case, which is quite unique one, as I will explain soon, I will find something about this miracle. So let's see if I was right. And what did we collect? We worked as a team of scholars. We collected all patterns. We collected media coverage of this case. Every article that discussed Apple Samsung wars in New York Times and Wall Street Journal on American side, Chosunilbo, Hankyo on the Korean side. We didn't took other national newspapers, but maybe in the future, after the tenure, okay? Right, and of course, social media, like how people actually reacted to this. There are endless parodies, and humor is a big part of this wars. So I would like you to read the next statement and just guess who said it. Apple or Samsung? What do you say? So I was sure it's going to be the easy case. You know, techno-nationalism on the Korean side and the global or universal or Western, we will continue this list on American side. But it was actually a little bit more complicated. Basically, Samsung waved national flag, but not the Korean one, the American one. It said, we are working for the future of American people. So I was quite surprised. They basically, inside Korea, they use techno-nationalism in Korean language usually, but also in English translation. They said, we are fighters for innovation. We are fighters for Korea. We represented very much, how to say, with dignity. And basically, even the fact that Samsung fight Apple was taken as a sign of pride, right? So I think it's interesting. But here in international sphere, in its newsroom website, it basically says we are working for the future of American people and for the world itself. So let's go inside the case to remember it. I don't think Apple needs introduction, but let's do it anyway. Who does have Apple phone? iPod? What about Samsung? Oh, just three of us non-Korean people will use Samsung, right? Of course, only Samsung. Basically, you can look at your gadget in iPod, iPhone, and everything. You will see that every gadget has this BioNode designed by Apple in California, assembled in China. Apple takes a lot of pride in this, in its design innovation, technological innovation. It works a lot on patents, and it's known for its legal disputes, not only against Samsung. Right? This is the most famous citation from Steve Jobs, right? I will spend my last dying breath, and he actually did, if I need to, and I will spend every penny of Apple's 40 billion in the bank to right this wrong, right? It's war rhetoric. I'm going to destroy Android because it's a stolen product. I'm willing to go to thermonuclear war on this, right? We know that he is one of the modern, of contemporary heroes, and basically he used this hero and both hero and victim dynamics to say the companies that stole from him, including Samsung Electronics, Google, and many others who use Android, right? They're basically the evil, and he is on the good side. So we can see that it's very dramatic, and it's not about technology. It's actually about definition of innovation. What is innovation? How do we do innovation? How do we protect innovation? This is very short about Apple. What Samsung did in this case specifically was quite amazing. He took several leading multinational companies, you see Dell, eBay, Facebook, and Google, and actually went to American academia. Yeah, they recruited 50 leading intellectual property professors who would say Samsung was right and Apple was wrong. Just a minute, we just talked about this case. They stole, they actually agreed to it, that they took, got inspired, learned from Apple, 8 design and utility patents. So why Samsung here is an innovation fighter, right? So it's an old discussion. On this wheel, they basically reinvented themselves with both victim and hero. And who is a villain here? Apple and American legal institutions. Why? They basically said that patents, hardware innovation, patents are good only for companies that do them, right? And who pays for all these patents and legal battles? We are. Okay, so it's an old discussion, and somehow Samsung could persuade these people. I don't know if I got paid or not, but it did persuade them to take the side and say publicly, and even publish several academic papers saying Samsung is right. Samsung here is an innovation fighter, and Apple stops the innovation. So how they did it? Basically, they put on their news website pictures like this, saying, for example, that design law was invented in 18th century. It was invented for spoon, for carpets, for one patent product, saying basically, it's for, you know, to to save these manufacturers, right? To save them from competition, to make it just. Unlike a spoon, a smartphone is more than 200 patents. So to say you stole this patent or that patent and calculate how much money you should return, it's a very difficult question. More than that, patents, as I said, they protect only the multinational companies themselves. And if, for example, the first car that was invented, the Cadillac, was patent, we would never ride it, right? Because nobody could pay all these patent fees to reproduce it as well. Luckily, it wasn't patent, and all of us have today's cars. Same, Samsung would say, goes for a smartphone. It shouldn't be patent in the first place because it harms the consumer. The second argument Samsung brought, it's history, it's outdated. American legal institutions should be more advanced. Last design patent case was heard 120 years ago. Right? Basically, they ridiculed these institutions as outdated, as something that shouldn't happen, right? And they did reverse this, how to say, image of Samsung as a traditional company, Korea as belonging to past, say, no, we belong to future. The American institution belong to the past. So we talked about past, we have to talk about future. Do you see Korea here? We're paving way for a better future for innovators, for consumers, and for you. No techno-nationalism, whatever. We basically talk in the global language. We talk to these American lawyers. We talk not on legal terms, but on legitimacy terms. Basically, they agreed that legally we lost, but legitimacy-wise, they won, right? Or at least it looks like that. So what we did with our team, and yes, I forgot to say, it's a work in progress, we decided to check. So we put these very impressive news releases explaining why the law is outdated, why we work for future, why we're actually victims of American institution and innovators. And we checked each newspaper we selected for 1 week after the press release, right? Press releases work very simply. We release them, and when the media echo them or repeats them, or maybe, I don't know, and give some kind of interpretation, what happened? What do you think happened? American media? Nothing. Not even one mention. There are about 300 media articles, so 1 week after the press release, it was silenced, it was ignored completely. Korean media, unsurprisingly, Chosunilbo did echo quite often what Samsung said, Hangul a little bit, but still all this techno-nationalism came out. You see, Samsung here is a global innovator. We are the nation of innovation, and this scandal, this war, patent wars, actually sign of how Korea is innovative. So what our next stage is to understand how Samsung is represented, right? For now, we're working on American media, and we see that mostly it's mentioned as the biggest manufacturer in the world, right? Manufacturer for Apple products, right? So they basically don't say much, and if they say, they underlie this manufacture part. What does it say about imitation innovation? It goes to imitation, right? So it goes to mechanical, it goes to a low in hierarchy of knowledge production. In terms of country, sometimes it mentioned that Samsung is from Korea, sometimes it's not. And it does cites a lot Apple representatives. If you think about news releases and how they live or die, we can see that we always cite almost the same quotes from Apple representatives, but almost nothing from Samsung one. So it's quite interesting how actually this receives a voice, right? If we publish it on their website, only people who will go to this website will find it, but who goes to websites to these days, right? So if media doesn't take it, it dies. Why I bring this picture? Do you know this one? This is Lucy Ko, the American Korean judge. She was supposed to decide who is right and who is wrong. And found it interesting because Korean media underlined that because she's Korean, or at least diaspora Korean, she has to be for Samsung here. And the American media didn't underline her Korean roots, so it was another techno-nationalism here. So basically, she asked the lawyer of Samsung, do you yourself see the differences? Just tell me without reading all these papers. And they put the two products and look at them. So this became a global meme, right? Trying to understand what exactly the difference. And this belongs to social media. So media, global media, or at least New York Times and Wall Street Journal that represent global media ignored Samsung voice or Samsung argument of innovation against patents. What did came through is a lot of love, Basically, this is a useless words, this is a funny words. We should invest more energy in innovation itself rather than talking how innovative they are, right? So it's some kind of Bakhtinian interpretation of war that nobody needs and nobody wants to see. To conclude, I would like to go to the future, even though we've already talked both about past and future. Basically, we understand here that even though Korea is recognized for its innovation status, we see that such stories, including humoristic ones and including silencing the Korean side, have actually pushed Korea to the past. Like in one of the papers, I call it experipherality. It's some kind of paradox. I talk with DAY2 and paraphrase him that just for the former colony, decolonization is a dialogue with the colonial past and not a simple after colonialism. For a modern miracle, experipherality is a continuous dialogue imposed to desire with its peripheral past. To say it simply, past and future is coexist in modern miracles, right? It's not like, and we lived happily after. It actually, the past comes with the baggage, as a baggage with, to the better future. And we can see it in such stories like Apple and Samsung when we see that peripheral past is always reminded, right? It's always, in this story, even though we'd like to cut and say, no, 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 we are living in the modern miracle now, and everything is fine. To visualize experipherality, I always bring this image. I really like to use it for my book when it will come out. So if you know somebody from Samsung, this is time to tell me, because we hold the permission rights. What do we see? What does it say in Korean? It's an advertisement, of course, but of what? This is very puzzling ad, and that's why I like it. Unfold in the future, right? And what's the place? We just talked about it in the previous panel, so I really like it. Occupying national spaces, the most famous ones. This is Concordia Plaza in Paris. I actually went there specifically to see what's happening there. It's a place for big posters like this. So what Samsung did in 2019 is to put these posters in all global cities, New York, Paris, Alexanderplatz in Berlin, Madrid, right? To say something in Korean nobody understands. So this is perfect for experientiality, right? From the one hand, you have money, you have this beautiful design, it's artistic one, right? To say, I'm so rich, I can do whatever I want. On the other hand, 99% don't understand it. So what's the future Samsung imagine is about? Probably not the future when everyone will talk in Korean, like Professor Don Baker so told us on new religions, right? This might be a future, but it's not a close one. But it's a future when K or Korea or Korean past wouldn't matter, right? We wouldn't be surprised by Korean big letters in the heart of Paris. Till that future will arrive, I think we're still stuck in experientiality, and this modern miracle hug both future and past at the same time. So by this opportunity, I would like to thank my team, Dr. Gasha Babo, Pyonho Park, and Lera Binovich, who collected and analyzed these studies, and I hope we will publish it soon in a better future. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you for your insightful presentation, Professor Lian. I think your presentation demonstrated how the idea of modern miracle shapes and begets the national image formation, and how it's always a double process, I think, the embracing the past and the future at the same time, and unsatisfactory past and like always like happily ever after future. So yeah, I was quite struck by the like double process. It's always continuous dialogue, right? So thank you. Okay, so our next presenter is Priyanka Yadav from Jawaharlal Nehru University. The title of his presentation is The Idea of Culture Other, the Study of North Korean Defectors in South Korea. So please join me in welcoming her, I'm sorry, her to the stage.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Priyanka Yadav, and I'm pursuing my PhD in Korean Studies from Jawaharlal Nehru University, New Delhi. Also, I'm working as research associate with the Air Force think tank called Center for Aerospace Power and Strategic Studies, New Delhi. So, today I'll be speaking about the idea of cultural other, the study of North Korean defectors in South Korea. So, I'll discuss how North Korean defectors are treated as cultural other or the cultural difference within the South Korean society. I'll also explore their lived experiences, state and societal responses, and what policy changes might encourage genuine integration rather than exclusion of North Korean defectors into the South Korean society. This paper also aims to analyze the discourse around North Korean defectors within the contemporary multicultural landscape within the South Korean society. This paper also sets out the tone for examination of political, societal, and economic factors, which reinforces the prejudices and discrimination that are prevalent in South Korean society with respect to the North Korean defectors. Uh, I'm so sorry. For methodology, I have tried to study through secondary survey review, that is the compilation of academic and policy literature, as well as the critical discourse analysis, which examines the language in public discourse and in the media, as well as some qualitative interviews, which I managed to take some excerpts from the qualitative interviews of North Korean escapees, which are residing in the Western societies, mainly Europe and America. Uh, to set out the tone of the paper, first I would like to highlight the terminologies that are associated with the North Korean defectors in South Korean society. North Koreans who defect to South Korea are often termed as Talbokcha in Korean, and this term in itself emphasizes on escaping the regime. There are other terminologies, for example, Talbukmin, that is North Korean escapee, Setomin, that is new settler, and Bukyomin, that is person of northern origin. There are also English labels which include North Korean defector, refugee, or even escapees. However, these kind of terminologies associated with North Korean defectors are sensitive to North Korean defectors, as these kind of terminologies uh, depict some sense of betrayal on their to their own country. So they have highlighted their dissatisfaction with these kind of terminologies which are used in South Korean society. Speaking of theoretical framework to study this paper, I have tried to incorporate Foucault's concept of governmentality, uh, which study how these government policies set some kind of power dynamics over the North Korean defectors in the South Korean society. Speaking of demographics, as of April 2025, there are around 352 North Korean defectors which have settled in South Korea. Approximately 70% of them are women, which with most new arrivals often called as MZ generation, that is the youngest generation of the millennials and the Gen Z generation. However, the annual arrivals of these defectors has drastically declined due to the corona pandemic. With the strict closures of North Korean borders, dropping the numbers from over 2,000 pre-pandemic to just 38 in quarter one of 2025. This is a graph which depicts that there are sizable number of North Korean women who defects to South Korea in comparison to the North Korean men, uh, because of the social stigmas which North Korean women have to face in the society, and also more affordable working conditions when they defect to China and then later to South Korea. Now I'll talk about the political factors which often shape the structural barriers to assimilation. Defectors, although often receive citizenship, one time aid, vocational training, and housing subsidies. However, they are left on their own, often finding difficulty in adjusting to a highly advanced society in the longer term. The longer term from the government is limited, resulting in their disassociation from society. Many also face higher unemployment and higher school dropout rates among the younger youth, and pronounced barriers to integration. The state programs which are given by the government are often criticized as outdated or too restrictive. There are also social stigmas which are associated with these North Korean defectors. They are often perceived as cultural other despite sharing shared ethnicity. There are discursive contrasts which are used with in reference to these North Korean defectors. For example, norm versus deviation, subject versus object, which reinforces the defectors' marginalization further in the South Korean society. Speaking statistically, 45.6% of South Koreans react negatively to defectors with respect to their accent, their dress, or their manner. Many defectors, due to which, often highlight their origins to avoid workplace and social discrimination in society. With respect to the economic factors, the employment rate is around 60.1%, which is lower than the national average of 63.5% of the South Korean population. In terms of unemployment, around 6.3% are defectors, income, which is more than double the digit of South Koreans, and which is even higher for North Korean women defectors, that is 7.7%. Most defectors work in manual labor or insecure day jobs. Few attain stable, skilled, or any kind of managerial positions. Even in public sector jobs, by the end of 2024, only 201 defectors were placed in such kind of jobs. Now I'll talk about the psychological barriers which are prevalent in the society, but they're often less talked about. Defectors often experience a high rate of societal ideation, that is 15% in comparison to the 5% of national average of South Korean population. Many of these defectors feel they have a feeling of alienation, isolation, and persistent trauma, with some even seeking redefection to the north. There is also gender vulnerability, where female defectors face greater risk in comparison to trafficking or compounded stigma. Therefore, there is need for some kind of advocacy from the state authorities for some kind of gender focused integration policies in the future. Speaking of the gendered experiences, 70% of defectors are women, as I highlighted earlier. In comparison to the comparative assimilation between the North Korean defectors who settle in South and the North Korean defectors who settle in the Western societies, they face lesser kind of discrimination in the Western societies, and and they get greater community support in comparison to the North Korean defectors who are staying in South Korean society. With respect to the measures, the Ministry of Unification have taken some measures in early 2025, where they launched North Korean Human Rights and Security Global Young Leadership Program. There is also need of re-evaluating the widespread discourse on North Korean defectors cultural differences is a preliminary step to incorporating them into South Korean society based on some kind of mutual understanding. Uh, with respect to these North Korean defectors, this will also help the prospective goal of unification in the broader term or in the longer run. If South Korean society can work on assimilating these fewer numbers, which will help in some kind of smaller unification at this level. Thus, moving beyond adaptive to genuinely being inclusive in nature is very critical. Therefore, there should be proper informed debate among the South Korean citizen to for the North Korean people that how to assimilate them better in the South Korean society. Uh, there can be some steps, for example, not just the initial aid but some kind of long term support, also some proactive anti discrimination policies which can facilitate integration into the skilled and public sector jobs in a better way, also promoting some public understanding of the cultural differences despite sharing their shared identity. In conclusion, I would like to say that cultural differences and othering persist as barriers to successful assimilation. Therefore, addressing these kind of discrimination requires systematic changes in policy as well as public perception as well as the media narratives. Because the true integration can only strengthen only when defectors' well being is addressed in a proper way, and then only the broader goal of inter Korean understanding and the unification can be better realized. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your thought-provoking presentation. I found it interesting that you point out cultural difference as a main factor in social prejudice and discrimination North Koreans face in the Korean society, and it's always gendered. Your point. So, I think we can open up the discussion through discussions and questions from the floor. So, presenters and discussants, please move to the table. Okay, so our first discussion is Chang-Hwan Kim at Halley, University. So I think you can start first, and then we can move to the second discussion, Byung-Hun Yoon, and then we will receive responses from the presenters. Okay, shall we start?
Thank you. My name is Chang-Hwan Kim from Hallym University. I have really enjoyed Professor Lian's presentation very much. Actually, my recent work is on the images of demos, people in Korea's democratization process. So when I saw the title of your presentation and I saw the word expression imagination, I thought like I should have think of this first. And anyway, I'm late, so it's yours. And to be frank, I was kind of very embarrassed listening to your presentation because what I have imagined from your slide that you gave last week, and it was quite different from what I heard today. So it was, it is not what I expected. And then what do I have to talk in this floor? So I have prepared my discussion about the images and national representations, especially on focusing on the Samsung and Korea, very in general level. In this interesting presentation, Professor Lian focuses on Korea's national image. That's what I have imagined or read from your slide, especially through the case of Samsung. this does make sense in some ways, in many ways, because Samsung is a Korea's very famous and leading company, famous around the world, and many Koreans are very proud of it when they see the Samsung products or commercials from abroad. Of course, this pride is kind of symptoms of peripheral consciousness. Uh, uh, from this point, using Samsung to show the national image or Korea's national image seems quite natural. But if we think about the term nation from national image, it is not obvious, I think, that a single company can represent a nation. As you know, the term nation has many various layers of meaning. In Korean, it is usually translated into 국가, which refers to a state or country, and it is also translated into 국민, which refers to people. So according to this kind of conventional translation, the national image of Korea or national image of any other country can be characterized by the practice of state or government, or can be featured by cultural aspect of people or folk, I think. And a corporation or company like Samsung is neither the state nor the people. People sometimes can be consumer, or sometimes can be workers. But of course, a company really is a part of the nation, of course. But among many various layers of meaning of nation, it seems that the corporate dimension, a company dimension, is kind of overrepresented, especially on this imagination of Samsung. How come? Why? How could one particular company or corporate can represent a national image or of country? And what can we imagine, or what we can't imagine, from a national image represented by Samsung? This is my question that I have imagined from your slide. And another point is that in this kind of imagination, Korea or Samsung or any other things appears as if it has gone through a miraculous transformation. It is not only for the case of Samsung, but it can be also applied to the modernization process as a whole in Korea. For instance, Korea's industrialization process is usually symbolized by the miracle of Han River, as you said, and the history of Korea's democratization is described in very miraculous or dramatic words. And the word miracle contains some truth indeed. But I think it is still just an image. Korea's modernization was I think not only a miracle, but also the result of some sacrifices, or even death, yeah, which have not been represented in such image of miracle. While even though we can acknowledge that Korea followed a really distinctive path of modernization, I think we should ask, we can also ask what or who is not represented in this conventional or familiar representation of miracle. And finally, I want to note that this problem of the unrepresented appears whenever a nation is imagined by some particular symbol, whether it is Samsung or Hyundai or K-pop or some other things. If you see Samsung or Korea or some other thing as the protagonist of a miracle, then other issues that are not integrated into this miracle narrative disappear. In case of Samsung, like its repression of labor union and collusion with the state or political power, or industrial accident, tax problem, and so on. The so-called miracle of Samsung or Korea was made possible only on the basis of this kind of issues. So instead of focusing on the achievement or innovation of Samsung as a miracle and taking it as a Korea's imagination or national image, we may have to I think as the title of our conference suggests, we have to read it or interpret this miracle narrative as kind of symptom. We have to symptomatically read this Samsung or Korea's miracle to find out what is forgotten or unrepresented or repressed or obscured behind it. Thank you.
Thank you for your interesting presentation. My name is Byung-hun Yoon, and I'm a PhD candidate at the Department of Sociology here at Seoul National University. And it's a pleasure to be the discussant for this presentation. I have to admit that I am not really an expert in this particular issue of North Korean defectors, but so I'm speaking with a basic understanding of the issue as a sociology major graduate student living in South Korea. And I do have some understanding and academic interest, sort of, concerning the psychocultural differences and similarities between North and South Koreans due to my master's thesis project. But still, I consider it quite basic. So from this viewpoint, I was glad that your presentation aimed for a comprehensive take on the factors of discriminations and prejudices operating in various dimensions, which shape the difficulties of North Korean defectors living in South Korea. And I think your presentation by itself provides a fruitful analysis and overview of the issue, and also would provide multiple effective starting points for further empirical research. And I have tried to come up with several points that might be helpful in furthering the analysis. First, this is a rather trivial point, but I think that the political factors that you are presenting in the slide number 7, I think they could be more adequately labeled as being like governance-related factors or governance-related elements that work as structural barriers to assimilation rather than political factors. I think this could be relevant in that there could be a separate dimension of outright political factors, since North Korea is much less recently, but still kind of a complex and thorny issue in both the political circles and popular political sentiment in South Korea. So I just thought that maybe you could add these related factors as the political factors and relabel the factors in slide number 7 as being governance related or something like that. And secondly, I thought that maybe a bit more nuanced approach on the particularity or specificity of the contemporary South Korean multicultural landscape, and also the same nuanced approach on the particularity of the North Korean defectors within that landscape could be fruitful for your research, because the contemporary South Korean multicultural arrangement, so to speak, is itself quite complex and peculiar in a way. And more than that, the issue and existence of North Korean defectors is historically structured and also emotionally charged in a very particular and binding way in South Korea. So your presentation seems to concentrate on the present circumstances, the very current moment of the issue. But I think, especially, I guess, when it comes to the understanding of the origins and workings of governance-related or cultural factors, could benefit heavily by looking through these historical trajectories and specificities. And also, above all things, the North Korean defectors are surely the cultural other in South Korea, but they are not like any other in their ways of being our other within the multicultural landscape in South Korea. Like, they are the most other for us, and at the same time, they are most us or we for others. So this kind of doubleness or ambivalence that these people have within the South Korean society is what makes them quite problematic and special in a way. So, and I thought maybe you could compare this case to other immigrant groups in contemporary South Korea, those with various ethnic, racial, and cultural backgrounds, and how they are perceived or received differently in governance, labor markets, or social interactions and discourses, and so on. Especially, I thought that comparing them with the case of Korean Chinese or Joseonjok, or maybe other ethnic Korean diaspora groups trying to immigrate into South Korea could be quite insightful for you. And thirdly, I think that it would be very, very fruitful if you could like push yourself a bit more to employ an outright comparative or a sort of anthropological perspective about the issue when you're pursuing your analysis. Because I had this impression that you either consciously or unconsciously have this aim to view this issue from a sort of detached or objective perspective, like kind of restraining yourself from like presenting your or pushing forth your own positionality within your empirical analysis and research aims. But as a Korean myself, and considering that the issue of North Korean defectors has been always a very important and much talked about issue in South Korean academia, what actually interests me is what would stand out for you. What questions would arise for a researcher looking at this issue from a totally different like background, and especially a totally different multicultural arrangement. So that could, I guess, reveal what the South Koreans, including myself, don't really get to see from their own perspective. So I think that could be a very unique contribution that you could make to this topic, and especially to the dialogue within and beyond the South Korean academia. And lastly, I thought that some more look into the coherence and disparities between what the North Korean defectors expected to experience in South Korea before coming here, and what they actually perceived to experience as they were really living here could be very revealing. I think there may be some survey questionnaires including these elements, and probably many interview excerpts concerning this issue, I guess. And also, I looked it up just yesterday and found that recently there are many YouTube channels actually run by young North Korean defectors with vlogs of their life in South Korea and all that. And also a substantial amount of data of South Korean media representations of North Korean defectors, like increasing representations, ranging from the mainstream news and movies and dramas, but also like reality TV shows and like YouTube comedy programs and all that. So there also seems to be some recent research articles looking into those data. So I think maybe you could also consult these data and research outputs. And I'll end on that. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your comments. I think they're excellent, and this is exactly what my presentation tried to say. I'm writing this book for the last 5 years, and I think I'm battling with this question over and over again. So they're not easy ones. And for example, can we say that the whole Korean nation is represented by Samsung? I believe many people would be offended by this. And it's not only Korean case. We can think about, like, I come from Israel, so it's a startup nation. Every Israel is a startup entrepreneur? No. And I'm pretty sure many countries have this kind of association with big corporations or famous corporation that we like or we don't like. So in my case, I try to go from bottom-up analysis. So look, for example, does media makes this connection or doesn't? Right? Do we mention Korea or do we go like Samsung at all? And sometimes when I present, people ask about Samsung. It's such a global company. Why do you call it Korean? It's not Korean anymore. And right now, you said yourself, Koreans take pride when they see ads of Samsung abroad. They say hi to them in airports and all major scenes. So I think this duality is quite common, and we can call it is it global or national. And that's what makes it such a unique case. And as I told before, each chapter tries to bring a different character. So Samsung was in the middle of the last chapter, K-pop fans of another. So each time I try to change it because, of course, I can't take such a multi-faced, such a big concept such as nation, right? And try to put it in one book. So I try to make it like a fragmented stories, like some kind of puzzle, which at the end might make sense. We'll see. I think it's also an excellent question. Doesn't constitute like what constitutes a miracle? What is a miracle, or modern miracle, as I call it? Like we can call anything miracle, and it might be a problem. What's not miracle? So I had excellent reviewers of my book manuscript, and one of them actually pushed me to think about it. It ended up with reading all literature, religious literature about miracles, and all economic literature about economic miracles, because somehow it ended up that economic miracle was born in 17th century. It was European miracle that made this economic history to bloom, and only with nationalism somehow almost every nation I know has called itself an economic miracle, right? So it's overused concept if we look at it, and of course we should be very careful how to use it, when to use it, what does it mean. So I dedicated like subchapter defining it as like unexpected event, transformation from what considered to be bad situation to better situation, made by humans, right? If you think about miracles, they're usually supernatural or divinity grace. Here, they're actually human-made, and you note is very important. They made with blood, sweat, and tears. Right? Miracles are not just miraculous; they actually have the dark side. And this is the last comment to address your question. Miracles are not only ambivalent because we look at the past and future at the same time. We're actually both dark and bright, right? We have bright side of modernization, development, better lives for all, and we have this dark side of sacrifice, price, death, and poor lives that were lost on the way to this human-made paradise. So I acknowledge this. I didn't mention it. Actually, it's not the first time somebody asked me. Samsung is such a think about labor strikes and all that things. I didn't see it in media, right? So I look at the media, they don't mention it, so I won't mention it as well when I present it. But of course, it's there. That's exactly what makes it so ambiguous. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Yoon, for those wonderful insights. First of all, I think I am pursuing my PhD on a PhD thesis, which is around geopolitics. Basically, I'm working on South Korea's Indo-Pacific strategy and mainly in the Yoon administration, the previous president. So, studying this paper was a challenging task to me. It happened to excite me, so I thought of exploring this topic more. So I'll try to see all the issues you mentioned with the paper and the structural limitations of this paper. Firstly, the political factors and the differentiation between the governance and the political factors. I think that was a limitation in the paper, and I think I need to differentiate both the political factors and the governance related factors when it comes to the North Korean defectors. With respect to the North Korean defectors and the other immigrants which are staying in South Korea, there is kind of differences between both the North Korean defectors as well as the other immigrants. However, the policies which are adopted by the Ministry of Unification is often they try to club them both. That has been some kind of problem with the North Korean defectors. They find it very discomforting that they are treated as similar to the other immigrants which are staying in the South Korean society. Um, their issue is that why they have to be treated as cultural other, that they travel to not traveling to other Western societies, and they considering South Korea as their prime destination to come there because they find some kind of solidarity and some kind of they have shared ethnicity, shared brotherhood. So they find it a bit discomforting when they are treated as cultural other in the South Korean society. With respect to the anthropological perspective which you highlighted, I think that is the limitation when a scholar is trying to study a society from the other perspective. They need to be bit more, binded to the topic in the sense that because I'm not a Korean, so maybe I might not understand the emotional bindedness that comes with the uh, South Korean defectors and the North Korean defectors and the South Korean population. Uh, However, you also highlighted the coherence and disparities which are associated with the North Korean defectors and the survey questionnaires. However, what I think is that when we ask North Korean defectors about their experience in South Korea, we often come with the angle of cultural biasness. Why can't our questionnaires would be should be in the sense that we ask that how many working hours you find difficult in South Korea, something like that. I mean, which is not, which does not come with the cultural biasness with it or the cultural difference with it, so that they can be more active respondents rather than them being the interviewers and interviewees, and we asking them questions which are about the cultural ethnicity and the biasness which they experience, rather than that how can they be assimilated more in the society so that they can associate themselves more and more with the South Korean people, rather than thinking that they are some people different from different background, because coming from that part of society which faces human rights violations, I think that is a very brave on them that they come and try to assimilate in a society which is a highly advanced society. So they face some kind of, when we associate the cultural biasness or cultural difference with it, I think that only brings so much of prejudices, and that kind of becomes the discomfort or uneasiness of North Koreans in the society, and that is the reason somewhere that they feel that they are not that they do not belong to this society, and they face some kind of societal tendencies, as well as they seek redefection to the north, because they feel that they are not better acclimatized to the south, and they do not have that better chances of uh, being fair with the South Korean population. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Very interesting and kind of different topics, but I'll try to go with the Kim Jong-un, the idea about the gaps, the things not talked about. So first thing about the North Korean situation, maybe kind of a broader context could be useful. For example, in Korean society, we have biases towards people who come from the south of South Korea, like accent and things like that. You have biases for Joseonchok, people who are living in China and migrated to Korea. So it might be a broader social issue that is not related only to the North Korean. Like when you focus on one group, doesn't necessarily mean that the issue is with that group, but maybe the issue is with integration of various kinds of Koreans or ethnic Koreans from different places on the peninsula and outside. That's one thing. And the other thing to consider, which I thought when you talked about, for example, the female-male differences, the emotional instability, that maybe we need also to consider what happens with these people. I mean, when we say defectors, we have maybe this image of somebody saying, oh, I don't want to be in North Korea, so yeah, I'm defecting. And he's accepted, and why aren't they accepted here? But these people mostly came here after at least several months, if not several years of traveling, right? To China and maybe on foot to Thailand, whatever. And many of these problems that you cited might be related to what they've undergone on the way. And that's the question, if Korean government wants or doesn't want to treat the problems. For example, you have so many female North Koreans who leave North Korea because they're trafficked out. And then, of course, they have all the suffering related to trafficking of females. So all these issues are not necessarily, I mean, they're sad and bad, not necessarily something the South Korean government can take care of. So all these kind of unspoken parts, like if you start a discussion about there's North Koreans in Seoul, why aren't they accepted? It's kind of a narrow perspective. I think the context needs to be a bit broader, or maybe you have a response for that. I mean, do you think South Korea government could take maybe measures on that part of the gap in the history of these people? So that's one gap that I was wondering about. And the gap in Ira's talk is also very related to what you were mentioning about the historical, how the past is haunting the present. And when I tried once to look at Samsung history, I saw that the official history, and actually I tried to look in all kind of venues. So they talk about the beginning, right, in the 30s, 1930s, like little grocery store, and it jumps fast forward to after the colonial period, yeah, or after World War II. So I was wondering about the usage of the term miracle. Maybe if you don't want to talk about miracle, but about hard work or something like that, you would have to say what they did in the colonial period or during World War II, right? Which they don't. So maybe for them also as a company, it's easier to take this miracle narrative because it kind of takes out the agency of maybe something that people don't want us to know. And I was wondering if you're writing the book about it, maybe, or maybe you know, and maybe you're including it in your book. But I'm always curious, what happened with Samsung from 1930, I think, 5 to 1950 or something? There's a gap, big gap. So do you know about that? I'm super curious about that. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I was thinking that maybe one point that Priyanka, pardon, sorry, could explore that makes unique North Koreans in difference to other migrants is something that caught my attention. That is that there's a minister of unification. In my country, we don't have such a minister. So I was wondering what is going on with this minister? How is this conceptualized? What its work? Maybe it is for another study, or maybe it's an entrance to understand how the government or the state in general addresses this issue. So this is unique, I believe, in terms of this group of migrants. So maybe there's a way for in this line. And for the presentation about Samsung, I was thinking about the observation how a company could represent the whole nation. And I don't know if in your book you discuss not only the how media is positioned towards Samsung. I mean, the discourses the media projects, but also what is the relationship of Samsung towards the citizens. I mean, I heard, I don't know if it's true, but I heard that when Samsung hires, the nation stops, kind of like that. So these kind of manifestations, maybe you could, use it to sustain why Samsung could be a representative of maybe not the whole nation, but what is its role in the nation. Thank you.
Thank you very much for two very different but yet very kind of challenging the questions you kind of brought out in your presentations. I have a question for both, one very separate one, different one. I will start with the North Korean kind of a case. I think it is kind of two different a bit. Repatriation is one thing, is a political exile, and then on top of it, there's a kind of South Korean political ideological kind of issue about the reunification as a kind of a nation's project to complete its political goal, the aims to lead, let's say, to be the legitimate nation state. So in this case, I was also thinking about after the collapse of the former Soviet Union, there was a lot of repatriation of the people from former Soviet republics, like Germans and some Jewish, and then some of them went back to their home country, so to speak, and some of them returned. There was a return of some, because someone I know, because there was a who went to Germany, and they decided to come back to Central Asia because they didn't really feel that they were accepted. So, and in that case, they had a choice. So, because for North Koreans, that they don't have any choice because they're political exiles. So you probably can think about this, not just the migration is one thing, repatriation, and so the case is quite complex. So maybe you could take that thing into account, and different kind of Koreanness. I mean, you talk about the Joseonjok and the Chinese Korean and Soviet Korean and Central Korean. I mean, there are many different kind of transnational Koreanness, which probably how this kind of fit into the North Korean, the Koreanness too. And with the Samsung, and I was keep thinking about two very different kind of example. The Fordism, they become a kind of a theoretical framework, how to understand the economic kind of the framework and the paradigm. So to some extent, it kind of became to represent some American economic kind of a drive and system and so on and so forth. And the other one was Hello Kitty, Sanrio, became a nation kind of national image. So it's two very different kind of examples, but at the same time, it has something to do with a nation branding kind of part of it. But Miracle is also very kind of fraught, kind of yeah. So it's maybe celebratory in a way, but it's kind of pushing all this kind of dirt under the carpet in a way, because and packaging in such way that Miracle, under the Miracle, then there's so many kind of sufferings and sacrifices and so on and so forth. So really kind of ironing out the complexity, what's really going on in that dynamic kind of a context. So maybe you could think about what kind of, I'm not saying that miracle is a wrong word, but in order to call it a miracle, what took to get there, and so in a way, kind of demystifying kind of the notion of a miracle. So this is one way of thinking about it. That's just my thought. Plus unpack it too, because you were talking about all different kinds of miracles. Another thing is a miracle in the Samsung case, because they're already the competitors in the global economy, whereas the Han River, they were still underdeveloped countries, so there was no competition in the global economy. So that's a different kind of, because that miracle was a very kind of a cute, little kind of nice, safe for the international or for the first world and the developed world, because Korea was a still developing or underdeveloped country, and also the Korean wave. This is kind of unthreatening cultural consumption production, whereas the Samsung is the many technological and the economic kind of the expansion and so forth. So it's a far more complex, I think.
Thank you so much for this amazing question. I don't know what to start, but colonial, of course, basically, I told only one story of techno-nationalism, of connecting technology and nation building, which is famous from even before the colonial period, right? So Japanese brought this idea of technology and making the nation great. Basically, in the book, I do something crazy. I tell each miracle from 4 characters: Koreans, Japanese, Americans, and non-national character. So basically, it's 4 different stories completely. Colonial story would say that they're offsprings of empire, and it's thanks to Japan, Korea has become a miracle for innovation. Americans would say it's thanks to foreign aid and role model, and of course pressure, because Americans at some point of time realized that Samsung and other chaebols basically take their technologies, they introduce them in both legal and illegal way. And this patent wars actually started long before Apple. And the last one is probably IMF, because it also pushed Samsung to innovate under the critique that it stifles local innovation. It's a long story, but it's also another story to be told. So I try to tell each miracle differently, otherwise I face with criticisms. What about colonial period? So thank you for asking. I actually covered this one. About company, nation, and people. Yeah, I think they have this Samsung dream. A lot of criticism, but also a lot of appreciation, a lot of pride, but a lot of shame. And it's another symbol of experimentality. For example, somebody told me, Koreans will buy Apple, but they all invest in Samsung. So it's some kind of interesting dynamics, I think. And outside of Korea, my students write papers on Samsung. Say, wow, Samsung's such a great company. I meet Koreans and they have this face about, human price and what's about it. So I think it's very interesting, this inward-outward dynamics and what we should do about it. So again, I try to bring both dark and bright sides and somehow to hug them both. And to economic paradise. Hello, Katie. I actually read a paper by Olga Fedorenko, who is professor here at Seoul National University. She wrote a paper about choco pie as a symbol of Korean nation. So just like choco pie, it's a great taste. After it, you have aftertaste, which is too sweet. So I think miracles are such ambivalent creatures. You can like them, and it's chocolate and marshmallow, and still they branded themselves as a symbol of Chong, of this heartwarming feeling that Korean people only can understand. So yeah, this let's celebrate and let's mourn at the same time. That's what makes it so interesting. Like miracle, we think miracles, we think good things will come, and that's why this concept is so overused, right? We don't think about miracles, globalization. It's always good, but somehow we can understand it's not always like this. And yeah, I think it's an excellent question. What is miracle? Can we count it as miracle? My editor told me, what about it's not a miracle, it's what happens after, and we lived happily ever after, right? What's happened to the happy family, and maybe something continue to innovate and everything become even better. I still think there is a kind of shock, some kind of sharp transformation, because something was famous for catching up. It was very symbol of catching up in 70s, right? It was with catching up with Sony that became another dream, Samsung dream of beating the Sony by taking its place. And there are many cases of it, both legal and illegal. I will underline this till my death, because there's a big difference between two, in which it just takes technology and becomes a source of pride.
But in a way, for it's not any just unique to Samsung.
Of course.
We have Chinese, many Chinese cases and so forth. This is what happens to everywhere in the world. So
Catching up.
Yes, it's not really unique. So we have to conduct it into it.
Yeah, that's why I used this terrible metaphor of advantage of backwardness. It's I forgot the name of the scholar, but he actually thought that all underdeveloped nations, that's what we should do. We should use it as an advantage, and got inspired by other national technologies to become better. So miracle, just like pride, is again becoming this sign of experipherality, because it's we should like self-development, right? You should develop yourself to become a miracle. And if Korea succeeded, of course, other nation like China and poor nation can succeed.
Sounds like in your liberal kind of propaganda.
Modernization, ideology, I would say. Yeah, propaganda is always good.
I think about the integration of North Koreans in a better way in a society, I think government can take some kind of initiatives. For example, addressing their trauma, which they experience in their life while while facing the hardships in North Korea. The better dialogue among younger generation, because the younger generation is they do not associate themselves, the South Korean generation, they do not associate themselves much with the cultural biasness, and they are more open to the younger North Korean generation, as well as there should be some kind of informed debate among citizens, plus in even at the younger level, in school curricula, there can be some kind of because South Koreans perceive North Koreans as someone coming from different family values, uh, different hardships, and conservative society. So maybe some kind of better assimilation prospects which can be brought in the in the school at the school level. uh, r- about the Ministry of Unification and the government initiatives that have been taken with respect to the unification of both the Koreas. I think across the administrations, both conservative as well as progressive administrations have taken their fair share in bringing the two Koreas together. Even last year, President Yoon Suk Yeol came with the August 15 doctrine, which was again a unilateral document which highlighted the human values and freedom which might bring the Korean unification. But it was easily dismantled because it did not consult the North Korean side, that what was, how do they feel about this doctrine, or any kind of dialogue between the two people, so two governments. So it was ultimately rejected. Again, there were no North Korean women which were consulted with respect to this doctrine, because as I talked about in my presentation, that there are sizable amount of North Korean women which defect to South Korea and to other countries. So there was not a informed and very calculated decision. Again, this year, the Minister of Reunification, he highlighted that he emphasized that there should be increased Trump's role in the unification of two Koreas. Again, however, Trump being Trump, he's not that interested. Also, on part of South Korean government has started so many projects. Even in India, I think there are so many. I think one or two universities which are working on a project of Uni Korea, where they highlight that how can be there can be some kind of measures which can fulfill the broader goal of unification. These factors being highlighted and said, there are so many uh, risks which come with it, and also the current geopolitical happenings which are taking place. Most significantly, which I would like to highlight, the increasing convergence of North Korea and Russia, with North Korea already dismantling the institutional structures of which highlighted that there can be some kind of reunification in the future. However, those hopes are dismantled now. North Korean president is not interested in any kind of unification, as he has categorically highlighted South Korea as a principal enemy. That point being said, again, the third point, which talked about the repatriation and in comparison to the German unification, this is just 1 minute. This is not going to be very easy, as in the case of German unification, or even the Vietnamese getting together. Uh, Even our country is divided on India and Pakistan, but then again, we were we were we the people wanted to do that. I mean, it was more of religious lines rather than being ideological. While in the Korean case, they were forced, that US wanted to bring South Korea, North Korea, the Soviet wanted to bring North Koreans. So that was the issue. So German unification is not going to be very Korean unification is not going to be easy in the context, because there are so many issues, in the sense that there are so many major players are involved in the unification of two Koreas. Principally the US, China, Japan. So these countries would not I mean, the path of reunification is not going to be that easy, as was the case with Germans. I mean, that is my point of view. I'm open to more interpretations, that how North Korea can be more assimilated, both of them. Thank you.
Thank you. We could continue the conversation, but time is up. So, okay, so I think we can, yeah.